Hello, everyone. And I am hoping that you're tuning in and seeing some of this live. If you are, the best thing about Association Chat live streaming is that you can ask your questions live when we have these incredible guests and have these incredible discussions. So if you are watching, please comment in the chat below, whether you're watching on YouTube Live or on LinkedIn Live, and share with us what brought you here today. Are you curious about OKRs? Are you curious about AI or agile or any of the other funky stuff we're going to end up talking about today? Let me know in the comments, and we're going to go ahead and get started because I want to welcome you. Welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm your host, KiKi L'Italien, and oh my gosh, what if the way you measure success is the very thing that is holding your association back from real innovation? It could be. We're going to talk about that. In an era of rising expectations, tightening resources, and rapid technological change, association leaders are being asked to rethink how they operate. And you're being asked to do this quickly. But how do you move forward with intention and clarity and trust? In this episode of Association Chat, I talk with Juan Sanchez. He's the CIO of Inteleos, and we're going to be talking about what it means to lead true transformation in the association space. And we're talking about OKRs, agile thinking, and what it takes to build systems that are flexible, tech savvy, and deeply aligned with your mission. But you don't want to hear me talking. You want to hear Juan. So let me bring him up to the screen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Kiki, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm okay. And I'm better now that you're here with me, because I know for a lot of people who are out there, a lot of association executives are looking around. They are having to make more and more decisions with more and more uncertainty. And having someone like you come on to Association Chat might help them with some of that. So I'm thankful that you're here. I want to start at the very beginning, and I want to talk about what sparked your interest in digital transformation and purpose-driven tech for nonprofits. So explain to us how you got to be here with us today.
All right. I will try to keep this as short as I can, because it could be a long story. I mean, look, the origin story kind of begins where, like most of us, fell into a nonprofit job by accident. What I was looking for was a move from my original career, which was in logistics, which was odd. And how did I end up doing what I do now? But there is actually a weird thread, because the first thing I realized at the job that I got when I got out of college was that the first thing they needed was systems in order to unlock the value that they were trying to get, right? And it was a pretty quick leap for me to say what I actually should get into is into building systems, right? Computer systems. I was into technology anyway, but so come back to the DC area. Newspapers is how you used to get jobs back in that time. And I found a couple of jobs that were, I didn't know, but they were associations. And I went and interviewed, and I always say that all the jobs I've ever gotten have had to do more about my love for music and sound than they have with technology. That first job, no different, because my boss then was a musician. And pretty much the whole interview was about, music. And he's like, but I want to find out if you can actually help me record a record. I'm like, sure, I can do that. He said, great, also a job. Mm-hmm. So I started just as a programmer, right? I really didn't have a background in programming, but I was learning, and it was the early heady days. So, kind of like what we are now with AI, but for web pages. And so anything you kind of said went at that time, right?
Yeah.
So that evolution, I'll fast forward some. That evolution obviously took me down a lot of different paths, because in these associations, typically you don't have big teams, so you get to learn a lot of different disciplines because of usually a small team. So I got into databases. I had already been into networking and some other things from a small business my brother and I tried to run in college. But little by little, I kind of started seeing the integration of all this stuff together, right? The one thing that I was missing was how to think about this like I could implement ideas and I can implement solutions and technology, but the part I was missing was this idea of like, how do I think about that, but first think about strategy. And then after I think about strategy, how do I think about how are the things that we're going to put into the company, how are they actually going to materially change anything about what we do? Right. And so that's the first time you start thinking about change. Digital transformation, as the name suggests, is about change. And I showed up at Inteleos in 2019, late summer of 2019. And a bunch of people have heard me tell the story. I'll tell it for this audience as well. Our CEO, Dale, who's always a learning guy, has 3 books on the desk for me with a handwritten note, which I still have. So pro tip to everybody out there, write handwritten notes because they mean something to people. And one of those books was around OKRs. It was a famous book, Measure What Matters. And the other book was Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And I've talked about those before. There was a third one, which was The End of Competitive Advantage. Don't tell anybody I still haven't read that book because I got so into the other two.
Just imagine where you would be if you had. Oh my gosh.
I know, right? And so like that was really the beginning of that transformation for myself, which was to understand strategy, understand what outcomes were, and OKRs were the methodology we were beginning to use at that time at Inteleos. And it's just, honestly, it's like it's weird, but it's like literally the only thing I can think about these days is I just constantly think about strategy and how to tie that together with outcomes.
Yeah, I've really noticed that. I mean, if any word could be, I think, connected to you based on what you write about the most that I've seen, okay, it would be outcomes. You definitely focus on that. And I have heard you mention Marty Kagan before in some of your interviews and talking about that. And Marty Kagan, for those who are watching, I had to look this up because I'm not as deep into all of this, right? But product management expert and author, he says the key to great product management is to focus on the right things. You need to prioritize the things that are most important to the customer and focus on solving the right problems. And I really see you focusing on that a lot. And recently you wrote in your Substack, which for everyone, I'm going to post this at the bottom. The Sophosapien Substack, right? The Sophosapien. Sophosapien, yes, from the Greek. Yeah, got it. Okay, I'm catching up. The Sophosapiens alphabet is what this is called. And it really stuck with me. In the age of AI agents, if you can't specify the outcome, you can't win. So that hits really hard for associations that are juggling a lot of different initiatives all at once, and who maybe were not so great at identifying that to begin with. So talk to us a little bit about that magic around OKRs and why you're so focused on using them to focus on the outcomes so that people understand out there, how this can maybe help them get closer to success.
Yeah. All right, cool. So look, the first disclaimer I want to just get out to everybody is this transition in thinking is incredibly hard. Okay. So like, it is not something that weirdly, when I first was introduced to this, I was like, oh, I got this. I read a book, right? So it's like staying at the Holiday Inn. I read a book and now I can do it. And you can, in theory, you can get up on a whiteboard or on your computer screen and type out something that looks like an OKR. And it's really not about the dogma about how to write the OKR, but it's sort of the essence of understanding the outcomes that matter to the thing you're trying to get to, and like getting into the essence of this. And it sounds a little hippy dippy, but it's hard. I mean, it really is. To get to the core and the heart of the problem that you're trying to solve in the company, or the change that you're trying to affect, is harder than it seems. So I just want to say that because I don't want people to come out here to try doing this and say, oh, all right, this is a goal setting thing, and we could just write goals like this, and this is fine. It's harder, but it's so worth the payback, right? Okay. And we've been doing it for 5 years. we're in the middle right now of like trying to really assess is this really landing with everybody at the company, or is it just some of us that are kind of getting it? And is it our own fever dream, right? So we got to calibrate that too, because executives will be executives, and that'll happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to do, but it's super meaningful and super important. And the connection with Marty, I had the honor of going to one of his master classes up in New York. I think it was last year, and for me, what it gets down to the clarity of thought, right? So Marty really has distilled down, and I mean, a lot of this stuff is connected. We can kind of explore some of those pockets later on, but Marty is about product, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so once you start thinking about product, you start thinking about, okay, why do I put a product into a market, right? And he basically says it's like it has to solve a problem, and that problem can't be one that you believe exists. It has to be one that the customer tells you exists, right? And they may tell you that explicitly. Pro tip: not a focus group, because they'll tell you what you want to hear in a focus group, right? Yeah. So they may tell you explicitly, or they might imply it to you by way of what they think the problem is, right? And so your job is to kind of infer something. Now, how do you translate that into a company? Right? How do we make teams in a company say, okay, I empathize and I understand with this problem space. Now, how am I going to measure that I am effectively solving that problem? And solving the problem isn't launching a product, right? Mm-hmm. It's what are the measurements in there? Go to the outcomes, right? What are the measurements in there that tell you that through proof, right? Outcomes. That's happening. And so in order for that to be true, there's things that you have to build in, right? You have to have what we call telemetry, right? Which is any way of getting information back from the person that's engaging with your product, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be, technology based. And then tracking that on a consistent basis so that you as a team know that you're making progress or that you're not making progress, right? Then that's a flywheel, because that informs what other initiatives are we going to try, right? So initiatives being more like the word I hate, which is projects, but initiatives, things. What are we going to try to keep that needle moving and changing in the right direction? And I think to put a little bit of bow on it for now for this little segment, the next sort of ladder up there, which is the part that I'm really exploring right now, is strategy, right? And really getting deep into what is strategy. What does it mean? What isn't strategy, right? Like Roger Martin, which is a guy I love, another strategy guy out there. He's got this famous little, I think it's like a 6 or 8 minute video that says strategy is not a plan, right? And so I've gotten into the whole breaking out into hives when I hear strategic planning as a term. So that's sort of the place where I feel now in sort of an executive role that I'm in, which is really where I need to learn, because I haven't been taught. I didn't get taught this anywhere along the way, really. And now trying to help the teams kind of connect all of these concepts together: product, outcome thinking, and strategy in one kind of cohesive picture for everybody.
Why do you think it's so unusual for association leaders to think about or talk about their planning and the way that they look at their organizations and what they're trying to achieve, using the terms, using this type of focus on outcomes and thinking about it this way? It's and I will say that you want, I looked at this and I thought, okay, if I'm going to form some OKRs around association chat, what is that going to look like? And sure, you can plug in your it's like measurable goals. It's like the SMART goals, No, because you're talking about really dialing in and being super honest and probably getting to a lot more questions than answers. So
that's right.
I'll go back to what I started out with, though, which is, why aren't more people talking like this or thinking like this?
Well, so the good news. So in the association space, I don't know for sure, right? So let's just touch on the origin of OKRs, right? They come out of the mid 70s, out of Intel, right? There's a guy named Andy Grove who's kind of like known as the originator of this stuff. He talks to another engineer at Intel, John Doerr, who is the guy who wrote the book I mentioned at the beginning. And then he goes to Larry and Sergey at Google and says, hey, you guys aren't doing well. Do you want to try this thing we tried over at Intel? And they said yes. And we kind of know what the rest of that story is, right? I'm not going to say that OKRs was what created Google, but it certainly didn't hurt, right? And then weirdly, a lot of other companies took it on as well. And we should be proud that here in the US, that there's been evil created through technology, no doubts. But as an industry and as a source of energy and innovation, you can't deny what happened in Silicon Valley between the 70s and the 2000s, right? I mean, it's either that or there's something in the water there.
Right.
So in those worlds, I think there's a lot of confluence that happens there. Agile thinking was happening, OKRs were there. Does that erode some of the more traditional values and barriers around what it means to be a leader, it means to be an executive? Maybe, I don't know. I would look, so if I'm really pressed into a corner to try to answer the question is, why does this not get used as much in associations? I think one is because we tend to be insular in terms of isolated from other industries, right? We're either focused on the industries we represent, trades or professions, or in our case, as Inteleos being certifying doctors and sonographers, that's where we are, right? And so unless you get cross-pollinated there, chances are it's going to be hard. So I think looking outwards to other industries, other sectors, I think is a good start. I think there's another part which is not unique to associations, but this is more of a leadership pathology, which is I can't be seen as not knowing the answer or seeing the future. Because if I do that, then what am I doing in the role, right? And so that leads you straight to, well, I'm going to have a plan. We're going to have a plan because plans give you the illusion of certainty into the future, right? And then as long as we do the plan, which by the way is an output, because we all got together in a room and we did the thing, and now we have a list of things that are going to maybe happen. And then 3 months from the day we did that thing, we don't even remember where we were when we did the meeting. Now things have changed, but it's okay. We did the plan. Now so this is a thing, right? And I think finally, at least in my experience, there is a weird over-indexing, almost cult-like thing around the nature of busyness, right? And so the more tasks I have on my list, the more value attaches to me in a really weird and perverse way as far as what my value is to a company. Well, look at all the things I have to get done today. Check, check, right? Okay, why am I doing any of that? Right? Why am I doing any of that? What are the outcomes of me getting that list in front of myself, or the boss puts it in front of me, or whatever it might be? That's where the outcome thinking, you can call it OKRs, you can call it whatever you want. Outcomes. Why am I doing the work I'm doing? And what meaning does it have to me personally? What meaning does it have to the company? And what meaning does it have to the customer?
Yeah. And you can't actually, I think that that's such a good point, because that's something that we can all practice in our daily lives too. Do you ever just stop and say, why am I doing this thing? Like, is this even still something that I care? Like, why am I don't know. Sometimes I look like, I look for solutions, or maybe I need to create some new thing. I put all this work into thinking I have to invent something new. And really it was just a matter of, well, why don't I just move this other thing that lives over here and reassign it in my life? This recently happened. And so, so I can see where this idea of questioning, like, why am I doing this, is really a good start. And it makes a lot of sense to do that in a lot of cases, especially for our associations, which are famous for saying things like, but we've always done it that way, and get stuck on this loop of continuing to do the same things, forgetting why they were even started in the first place. I did put a live viewer question out here for anybody that might be watching out there in the ether. A live viewer question: what's one outdated process or mindset in your organization that you believe is holding back real innovation? Which kind of feeds into what Juan and I are talking about today in this discussion. So to continue on in this track, in your recent Substack article that you posted, you talk about key results as a service. Okay. And how the future of software is moving toward outcome-driven AI agents. And this whole idea of agentic AI is becoming more and more popular as people are striving to learn even more about AI and can't get enough information or getting too much of it, whichever the case may be. Can you unpack that idea for our listeners, and especially those in the association world? Like, what does it mean for how we define success?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that key results as a service post came in a lightning bolt to me when it was the last thing I posted. And I was just actually almost surprised how fast it came. This all came from an interview I saw with Box's CEO, Aaron Levine. Levine is, I think, is his last name. And Aaron was talking about this concept because in Box, one of the things that they're trying to do is introduce a lot of AI tooling into the platform. For anybody that doesn't know what Box is, just it's a file repository. It's Dropbox, Google Drive, right? This kind of thing. And it was really his idea that I just kind of expanded on it and linked it to our ability as organizations to think in the same way. And what he said was simple. He said, look, in the past, software as a service, SaaS, right? Its value proposition for the company putting the SaaS into the market was, how many seats can I sell, right? It was like, I'm going to give you a tool. Let's look at any of these. I mean, we're using right now, right? StreamYard. How many seats can I sell on StreamYard so that more podcasters can do what they do, right? Or let's think about even Box itself. I need to sell all the seats at a company so that everybody at that company has access to content. Okay. That was sort of the premise. The idea was that I sell you the tool, you as human beings figure out what to do with that, how to drive outcomes from it, right? How to derive value from the tool I put in front of you. What he says is, when AI shows up and you begin to give AI models agency, so agentic AI, right? This idea of they can carry out some sort of intelligent actions on your behalf, and they have memory. There's a couple of attributes around what it means to be an agent. Suddenly, the whole point of launching something to do a thing should come at the result of something doing a thing should be an outcome, right? Not just completing tasks, but you wouldn't pay, right? This is what part it was so funny, is like you wouldn't pay a software company to sell you a thing that is supposed to be an agent and do a thing if you couldn't demonstrate its outcome. So why are you doing that for your human beings?
Right.
Right.
Such a good point.
Right. And so he said, look, the future, he thinks, right? And I think I like the take. He says, if this is true and agents are going to become the thing, then people are going to demand outcome metrics from the purchasing that they're doing out of these agents. Fine. How, as a company, will we know which agent platforms to pick if we can't define the outcomes we hope to get? And so that's the lock, right? That's the inside part, is like, I, as a company and as leaders and as employees and whatever, all of us as teams, we need to understand what outcomes are. We need to understand which ones make sense for the kinds of value we're trying to deliver, so that we then people, and maybe in the tech space or other parts of the organization, go out to buy these agent tools. They're going to say, yeah, this agent tool will be able to do the outcome because the outcome aligns with the one we have internally. That's what that post is entirely about.
Well, thank you for explaining that, just because I thought it was a really interesting take. And again, this like more argument for why we really need to focus on the outcomes and really get serious about what that looks like. And I think it's really, it's really interesting to think that we don't focus more on these, to make sure that we've got it right, to make sure that the questions that we're asking are right. And so I thought, maybe you might share a success story with us about a time when OKRs helped your organization or helped your team to pivot or solve some kind of complex challenge with measurable outcomes.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there's a success story, which is a different one. And I'll tell you the more tangible one, but the first one is seeing the light or the switch go off in a person's or a team's mind, right? When they're like, oh, and actually you brought up a good example. So thinking about OKRs and podcasts. So the free unsolicited advice. Usually it's something like a podcast or a marketing campaign or something like this. When people begin to think about outcomes, what they naturally will tend to do is say, oh, here's an outcome. I'm going to send 15,000 emails. Okay. So I did. This is an outcome. It was 15,000 emails went out. Great.
Sure.
Can you put money in the bank for every one of those emails that went out? If the answer to that question is no, then there's not an outcome. It's an output. Right. You sent 15,000 emails, right? Or in your case, let's say I want to increase, you really want to increase, let's say, viewership or whatever it might be in a podcast. But the thing that you're going to focus on is frequency of posting to LinkedIn about it, right? That's an output. The outcome is, did you actually drive a change in your viewership? Right. That's the outcome. The other stuff is all output stuff. So that moment when people kind of click is like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been really just tracking outputs my whole time, thinking that they were things I was really having impact with. Now, like a legitimate example for us, boy, there's been some good ones actually in our tech team. I'll give you a couple of quick ones. One was at the end of last quarter. At the end of the Q4 of 2024. I've talked about this idea of digital wallets and verified credentials. It's a totally different topic, but as a company, one of the things that we said, okay, we need to put this technology into the hands of our practitioners, right? And one of our key results at the end of the quarter was to effectively have, and there's a nuance here. We wanted to have 10% of our customer base that they had claimed a wallet and had at least one of our verified credentials in that wallet. Okay. On the face of it, it was a key result for us at that moment. Now the good news is because we set the standard, we set the goal, we actually like 3x that. I think we issued something like 35,000 wallets or something like that.
Wow.
So it was way more than we had originally anticipated. So as a team, we felt good about it, right? Now here's the catch. As a first go, it was fine, but I would challenge the team. We've challenged ourselves around this. Was that really the outcome, right? The outcome, and I say yes to start, but not really what we were driving at. What we were driving at is if we believe that verified credentials and that technology, that fundamental technology shift there is valuable and solves a problem. The way we measure the outcome is that the doctors, the sonographers that we represent are sharing those credentials with either patients or employers or insurers. That's unlocking a new kind of value that didn't exist before, that was hard to do before. We've solved some sort of meaningful problem for them. That's a thing we haven't been able to quite crack the nut at measuring. We're working with our partner Credivera on doing this, but this is the thing. So that's a success. Other simple successes, shorter story. This will be for my tech friends. We all have to deal with support tickets, right? And actually this will be it's a question you didn't ask, but it's an important point. The difference between a KPI and an OKR.
I'm so glad you're answering that, because I actually did think about that before. Yes.
Yeah. So this one gets confused a little bit, at least, and so we've come up with a way to really, I think, make it simple to understand. A KPI is a health metric. It goes red or it goes green, right? It's either in a good standing or a good space, or it's in a bad space, up or down. It doesn't really matter. An OKR is a metric you use to measure change, right? KPIs measure your health. OKRs measure change. All right. Now, an OKR can become a KPI when its stability is stable. It's not changing and it's not measuring change anymore. It's gotten to a steady state. So the example with the support side of things is we got all these tickets for support. And first thing was, let's find out things that measure success here. So we came up with two very common ones. What's our time to resolution and what's our time to first response, right? So we are committing to the company that we will answer at least first touch within 1 hour of any ticket that comes in, right? and we will promise, we aim to promise to resolve your issue within some other period of time. And it kind of depends on severity. First, we didn't have the numbers, so we started tracking the numbers. Then we said, oh, those aren't good. We can do better than that. That's a key result. Let's reduce that. How are we going to reduce that? That's a problem to solve. That's the team's problem to solve, not mine. I'm not going to tell them how to do it. They had to figure out how they were going to get there, right? So then we tracked that every week. Then we could see the numbers kind of started to come down. We had some impact, right? Finally, it got to a place where like, okay, this is so stable now that we've gotten to a place where could we optimize more? Probably. The law of diminishing returns starts to show up. Why would you? For the effort. So now we turn that into a KPI, which we also just look at really quickly every week and say, how are we doing? 0, 0. Okay, we're good. We haven't breached our KPI threshold. Let's move on. That's another success story.
Very nice. Very nice. I like these examples, but I also feel like I don't want to tell my CEO about this yet, because I know that my Monday board of my list of the KPIs I'm responsible for would get probably a lot more serious and more difficult. And actually to that end, and I'm kind of joking because I ultimately want to be the most successful I can be for my organization as possible. Yes. And I think it'd be more work. So there you go.
Yeah. There is a mindset shift here for everybody involved, right?
Yeah. I do want to make a note that for our live viewers, there were a couple of you that were able to respond to the live viewer question. What's one outdated process or mindset in your organization that you believe is holding back real innovation? And we had a couple folks post in here. One from Tracy, who says, outdated mindset, setting goals that are achievable or can be easily met. Yes, your performance is dependent on meeting these goals. Yeah, you can see how things can just become a lot less effective when that is happening.
Yeah, you're optimizing for the wrong thing in that scenario.
Sure. And Nicole says, along the same lines as Teresa's comment, setting easy goals that have already been achieved at the time the goals are being written, because bonuses are tied to goal achievement. This does not incentivize innovation. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
One time I heard Reggie Henry, and this is years ago, speaking about how he would support innovation on the team. And people, the question to him was, well, how do you build that in? How do you actually make that so that it is formalized? And he had an idea box. I don't know if he still does that. I should check. But he was talking about how he has an idea box, and people are supposed to submit tons and tons of ideas. They just have to submit lots and lots of ideas. And it's not that the idea is the best idea or that it is the most powerful idea or all of this stuff. It was that they had to submit, X amount, at least a certain amount, and try to surpass that, with the idea that what we're trying to support is more innovative thinking and coming up with more ideas. So if you're going to reward people who are looking for new ideas and to try to suggest them, that was how he said that he went about doing that, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a cool idea. I think I go back to the as long, I would say the guardrail for me is as long as we've done a good enough job at framing. Look, I mean, there's local ideas, right? Like, this thing that's really annoying, let's just fix this. Yeah, let's do that, right? That's easy. And then the bigger sort of problem-solving, outward-facing things is, as long as they're grounded in our ability to explain strategy in a really clear way, the choices that the active choices we have made that then manifest in strategy, right? Like, so people they're not off having an idea of like, well, let's build airplanes. I mean, yeah, it's innovative. Right. We're not going to do that though.
Yeah. Well, and you say, so, and it's weird quoting you to you, but you say outcome fluency, the ability to define and align around outcomes, is going to be the make or break skill for organizations in this new era, right? Yeah. So what does building that outcome muscle look like for associations? what does it look like when they're starting to embrace this, and maybe, they're not as savvy around OKRs getting started in this line of thought?
Yeah. Look, I think this is true regardless of what domain we're talking about. But fundamentally, you've got to become, if you aren't, and be really honest about it, are you a learning organization?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't, look, I don't mean that you pay for tuition reimbursement.
Right.
That is not a learning organization, right? That's a benefit package. It's not a learning organization. So what I mean is, how often are teams sharing videos, blog posts, podcasts, courses they're taking? Are you as a company paying for learning platforms for everybody, or teams, or whatever makes sense for you? Are you cultivating active learning through not only engaging with the material, but then discussion about the material together in some way, right? So this is going to be true. Look, AI, all the things right now, this is what it's going to take, is a lot of learning. And at the executive level, or you, like something we do, we tend to pick a book and we all sort of read it together at some level, and it becomes part of our conversation. You got to be careful, again, not to turn it into, the CEO and the executive team's fever dreams, and now nobody understands what you're talking about, right? So that's a thing. That's definitely a thing. Okay, so that's sort of step one. So if you walk through that door and you want to think about outcomes, there are a ton of resources out there for you to learn about this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So first thing, you just got to put, like I think one of our metaphors early on was, you got to put the time in at the gym. I'm not a gym guy. But okay, fine. I got guitars behind me. I used to practice 9-12 hours, right? This was back when I still thought I was going to be a musician. So you got to put the time in. And then you begin to simply say, it's really simply, it's just, okay, in this, we understand it. This is a quarterly thing. We kind of frame it around this. Okay, just start. Find one problem that you want to change. You want to change something about your business, and apply the technique, right? Mm-hmm. It really is that. Now, another piece of advice I would give is, if you think it's got some potential for you as a company, or even as a division or a team level, there are some really good coaches out there that specialize in OKRs, right? I mentioned John went and talked to the guys at Google, right? Like, they didn't know what to do with this. So this guy had kind of figured it out, and he was out there coaching. We use a coach. There's plenty of people out there in the world that will coach on this. So I would encourage you, if you think that this is a thing that you want to give a shot, pay a couple bucks to a coach early, so that they get you sort of on the right track. And I think that partnership is super important. That's really all it takes.
I really love that. So I want to go into talking about a little bit about organizational design, and looking at organizational design and how it is often overlooked. What do you think needs to evolve in that area for associations to, I'd say, stay relevant over the next 5 to 10 years, with the caveat that in the back of my brain, I always hear Jeff DeCania saying, we don't want to be relevant. We want to thrive, right? Like, we should be wanting to be more than relevant. But okay, let's just go there.
Yeah. And I think Jeff's point is well taken, right? Relevancy is a thing you have to have, right? Now, I'm not sure exactly how he framed it when he said it, but relevancy in the status quo makes sense if that's all that's being demanded of you from your environment, from your customer base, or what have you, right? If it is not, then relevancy can be defined by the way you change shape, right? And shape being, what products are you putting into the market? What are the skills that you've got on board at your company? And then how do you maybe even this is, for me, the last thing is, what are the labels you give to teams and or titles? That doesn't really matter, right? Eventually it'll matter, and it matters a lot to HR teams. I understand why, because they have to create some sense of, who are you? What do you do? And how much do we pay you? I get it.
Yeah. Right.
Right? And so coming up with just a weird name isn't gonna solve that problem. But I think that we talk a lot about digital transformation and transformation in general. And I've kind of aped Marty Kagan's sort of definition of transformation, which I just love how clean it is It's being able to do something tomorrow that you can't do today.
No, right.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's and then, and I tease the teams, right? I'm like, we want to be a beautiful butterfly. Like, I'm just a caterpillar. I need beautiful wings, right? So it's a manifestation of change, physically manifesting change in a creature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what would that be? First of all, ask yourself the question, why does the caterpillar turn into a butterfly, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's your trigger for change, right? So identify that in my head. And I know, again, it's goofy how to think about this stuff, but these kind of simple models, heuristics work, right? They just kind of just simplify the thing. So what is the trigger for change? Have you identified that? Okay. Then that should start informing you about what is the next shape you need to take, right? Like, what is the butterfly version of you tomorrow?
Right.
And what is the attribute the butterfly got? Well, the butterfly got the ability to fly. I mean, that's a simple thing, the fly, right? Okay. What do we need to do to fly? Okay. That's how you start kind of getting. Now, what I think ends up happening is you intellectualize that change, but you forget that the organization inside, in terms of how people relate and how, what I call the sticks and bricks diagram, the org chart, how that manifests in people's minds as to who do I report to, where are the centers of power, where are the centers of influence and decision making, all of this stuff, they're all signals, right? And if you don't also actively think about how am I going to change the way I signal to the people at this company, how we work together and how influence and how power works here and how decision making works here, you're going to end up with the same sort of result as you were when you started.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to propose, and everybody's different, and you could take it by case, but if you believe you transformed and you guys are still structured exactly the same way as you were, I'd press a little harder on the concept of whether or not you really transformed or not.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. You're not, there are no easy outs with you. It's like, it's going to be real 100%. Yeah. You're going to be pushing for that.
Very good. I mean, KiKi, I think a quick thing here for the association space specifically, I've written a little bit about this, but I've mentioned it before, but it keeps nagging me. And the nagging is, if you're going to be a different kind of company as an association, isn't the first thing you need to challenge the concept of membership entirely? Right. And this ties to product, right? Like, so right. My thing, I can't quite land on it, but it's like, just membership isn't a product, right? But okay, now think about that in org charts terms, right? Tomorrow we do away with a membership organization team. They're gone. And I'm being extra.
You do. I mean, I can actually sense a vibration in the force right now as like all these membership people are like,
no, right. But that's the kind, I think you don't have to do that. But what I'm saying is you got to put that on the table as clay. Let's play with that idea. And maybe what we come out with is some new version or a slightly varied version of what membership is and what it means and how it manifests at this company. Maybe one of those answers is, you know what? What are we doing? That's just subscription management. What we actually sell is all this other stuff.
I love that idea just because in the event space, I've watched event professionals who are really event designers get super innovative about the way that they think about activations and engagement and what's the purpose of this getting people together. And there's some really clever people who have they've put it all on the table to play with and say, what's the whole point? If we're just going to get together and convene a bunch of people, get some coffee urns and stuff like that, what are we really ultimately trying to do? And when they get super honest about that, super creative, things come as a result. Or I've also seen it become extremely pared down, where it's maybe the innovation is in the fact that it's very simplified and super focused and beautiful, right? An elegant result as a result of that type of thing.
And you just
membership would be amazing.
Right. And you just actually landed in the way you said it. If you think about it, you got into the idea pretty quickly about what would be the outcomes of
Yeah.
us doing this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it
That's
forces
true.
that conversation stronger, right? What are the results? What are the
Mhm.
outcomes of us thinking about it this other way? I also love the idea of simplicity, because you're right. I mean, I don't know whose it is, but it's a saying, I think, out there that perfection is when there's nothing left to take away.
Oh,
Right.
I like that.
Uh,
Yeah.
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 And so what can you say? Sometimes we get caught in this cycle of like more, and I've heard it in membership for years, right? It's like, how many more benefits can we bundle? Because more is better. It's like, well, but they call it in SaaS, they call this a product enablement. Yeah, you got 15 features, right? Product or benefits, we call that in membership, right? How many of those features are actually being used by your customer base?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many of those are really increasing? I'll get into a little bit of strategy chat here, but how many of those are really increasing your customers' willingness to pay?
Right. Right. Oh, it's such a good question. I really do think that ultimately that should be I should just take a day and that be the question and just sit there and that be it. That's the one question all day long.
Yeah.
Done. Like just spend the whole day with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So I can't believe how fast time is going, but I do have some rapid fire questions that I want to ask. I also want to offer the people who are watching us live and engaging in comments if they have any questions, go ahead and ask away, because we will bring them up and I will ask Juan before we wrap up today. But you mentioned music earlier. Obviously, you have the guitars behind you. So I wanted to ask for, your first rapid fire question. What was the first concert you ever went to? First concert.
Oh boy, that's a. Let me see if I can remember. Okay, I can tell you the first. So I was really I still am. I'm into heavy metal music, amongst other kinds of music. But I remember the first heavy metal concert I went to on my own, because my parents would take me a lot to concerts when I was a kid, and I really don't remember which might have been the first one of those. The heavy metal one was in 1994 in New York City, Halloween night at a place that's no longer there called the Academy, to see a band from Denmark that I loved, and I still do, called Merciful Fate.
Amazing.
That is a factoid
Amazing.
nobody except me and my buddy who went to that concert together know. That's funny.
That is incredible.
I still have
that.
I still have the ticket stub.
That's so cool. I love that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. What a cool concert to remember, though. I mean,
Yeah, and the band is they were kind of a fun, like, gothic, face paint band. And so Halloween, they have a song called Halloween. So it was just all very kitschy, but it was everything I wanted in my first heavy metal show.
Nice. I love it. I was like, as you started to describe him, like, are you talking about like Guar? Are we going in that direction, or how is it going to be?
That's a good local reference.
Yeah. So, and Nicole says the Go-Go's with the Flock of Seagulls as the opening band. How fun!
Nice.
Oh my god,
Flock of Seagulls. That was some hair. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. So next rapid fire question. I have to say this. Okay. What's your go-to brain break during a long Zoom day or Teams day, or pick your poison?
Right.
What's a good brain?
Good break for me is outside. Usually, I like that if the weather's nice, right? So luckily we got to put up a hammock stand, and I brought some really cool hammocks from Colombia, from where I'm from, and we've got one set out there when it's not raining. So I will definitely dip into the hammock life, and that's pretty nice.
Hammock life. Oh, I want hammock life right now. Oh my gosh, that sounds really great.
Yeah.
Okay. Final rapid fire question. One book every emerging leader must read.
I love this question. All right, I'm going to answer it. I'm also going to say I have just recently changed my mind, and I reserve the right to change my mind again, probably in a week from now when I read the next book.
Okay, this is good.
So right now there's a book called Thinking in Systems. And it is not very long. It originally came out, I think, back in 1994, written by a thinking systems professor in the UK. And she, I think actually the book was finished. She passed away before it was finished. And I think some of her teammates finished it, for her. I think that was the story. Anyway, small book, but I think as a leader, the ability to understand how systems work. And I'm not talking about like computer systems, right? Like literally look outside your window and try to imagine the relationships between all the things that make the trees and the grass and the animals and all these things. Everything is a system, right? It's an integrated system. We are reflections of all of that. We're in fact not reflections. We are that too, right? As people, as communities, as companies.
Yeah.
Your ability as a leader to understand the abstracted versions of those concepts, I think is super powerful to help you understand where strategy should be, what levers you should move, where information is flowing, where is value being created, all of the other kind of funny buzzwords we love. I think it all begins with understanding the at least the basic structures of systems.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to check it out just for that sounds really intriguing, but I have to admit there's something that makes me want to tease you at this point about, there's this really great book about strategic planning. I'll send it to you right after this,
There's a ton of those. Yeah. Yeah. They're, let me know how it goes.
I won't send you that book, Juan. Don't you worry about that. Okay.
That's funny.
All right.
Yeah. No, that's the one right now. I mean, there's ping me. I'll send you a list of probably 20 more that I've got. I mean, I've got one right here, Better, Simpler Strategy. I just got a chance to have a class from the professor that wrote that book. And I mean, that's another massive book. I mean, there's just so much intelligence and so much knowledge out there. That's what I'm talking about, right? It's like the learning part, right? Like that Thinking in Systems book. I unfairly invited my leadership team in technology to lunch, and then I gave them all the book, and I said, "Yeah, this is my gift to you all, but you all have to read it. This is the homework." And also I'm buying lunch, so
So you're welcome. Yes.
They won't do that again. They learned that lesson.
I got suckered into that lunch. Yeah. I think that it's exciting when you start thinking about it in terms of let's grow together and let's learn together. And I do see that happening. I mean, I'll say for Big Red we have every other week we get together and we share basically what some AI tests, some way that we're testing something to do with AI, and how we're integrating it with what we do, work-wise. But just imagine if it weren't just about AI, but it were something that we were, trying to grow and learn together. It doesn't have to just be about AI. So you've got the wheels turning. I'm thinking about what would it look like in my own organization to see how we could maybe take this and continue to grow. So thank you for
AI,
that.
look, and AI, right? AI is just the latest thing that's in front of us right now, right? I think abstractly, it's got some different edges to it for sure. Some of them kind of weirdly existential and awful, and also amazing to think about. They asked me, I was doing something the other day, and they asked me what's one bold prediction, and I kind of bummed everybody out because I said, well, AI has the potential to bring more people out of poverty and misery than pretty much anything that we've invented so far. Also, the worst parts of humanity.
Right. Yeah, and our track record is not so great. So that's true. That is true. Well, okay. So I lied. I do have one last question, and that is because you are often invited to speak on podcasts like this and to answer questions from people like me. What is one question that you're never asked, but you wish you would be? It's a question you never get asked, but it's really something that somebody like me, I should be asking you.
It's funny. Yeah. I don't know if it never, pretty much never, at least not on podcasts, is what do I do for fun?
Okay. So you can answer that too.
Can
What do you do for fun? Yeah.
I read books about strategy planning? No.
Oh my gosh.
No. I like, because my brain goes at 1,000,000 miles an hour, usually when I'm sitting here in this office. My therapy is to go out and get into a car and just go driving. Because of the amount of focus it takes, it makes my brain go quiet for that amount of time. So it's one of those things. It's just the zen of the drive and the whole thing. That's my happy place. A lot of people get this with motorcycles and that kind of thing too. Like it's a thing. It just happens to be my thing. I've loved cars since I was a little kid. So now you just get to play with, the real version of the toys you played with when you were a kid.
Do you have nice cars? Do you have interesting cars?
Yes, I have interesting cars.
Okay.
It's a problem.
Maybe that's for another discussion further down the road, having to find out if you have pictures. I would love to see them. So,
okay.
All right. I'm already imagining the magazine article that's going to come out next from them. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And this is the most we've ever had a chance to really talk. So I'm glad that I had a chance to get to know you better and to ask you some questions about these things that I hear you speak about on different podcast episodes, and I read, and some of the things that you post about. It's fascinating stuff. And I think it'll be really exciting to hear more and more association executives use this kind of language and apply these concepts to their own organization. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Kiki. Great questions. It's super easy conversation. I love this. So it was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. All right, everyone. So what did you think? Let me know. I want you to make sure that you subscribe. I'm going to put in the show notes everything. You need to figure out where the Substack is so that you can subscribe to that. You definitely want to subscribe to that because it's really interesting stuff. And I will say that Juan is pretty good about keeping it up to date. He posts a lot. So you definitely want to go and check that out. You also want to definitely continue to think about ways that you can make your organization a learning organization. That was something that when it got brought up, I thought, wow, if you're starting and you're really not yet there, that is a great place to go when you're thinking about how can we get our culture to the point where we can embrace some of these new ideas and really have them be effective. We also ended up talking about identifying the right problem and telemetry and measuring outcomes and talking about initiatives and not projects. There's a lot here. So if you want to go back and watch the replay is going to be available. The edited version of this is going to come out in the next 3 weeks. And don't forget, new episodes drop every Wednesday. So Association Chat has a full lineup of big ideas and bold voices. This was one of them. So with all of that, I hope you heard some good things. You're going to apply them. You're going to think about them. And until next time, this is KiKi L'Italien signing off and reminding you to keep asking questions every day. Because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.